As someone who loves video games and has a life that requires Wi-Fi for about 90% of it, I've seen lots of people say that Uncharted is essentially a series with no weak entries, all gas, no brakes, and that led me to one conclusion. I must be the only person on the planet that remembers Uncharted 3 exists. Then I checked IGN and Metacritic scores and saw that no, many people actually think this is the best one in the series. Huh? Listen, I don't hate this game or anything, but I always remembered this as being the weakest link in the chain, that the only thing remarkable about this entry in this fantastic series is how unremarkable it is, and the idea that people can have opinions other than mine is frankly just baffling. But I always try to go into reviews with an open mind, so let's see if Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception is as good as everyone else says, or as mid as I do in the spoiler review. I've never really wanted to review a live service game, and it's because it dates the video very quickly. I want my videos to be evergreen, and with a new structure of a new hero every month, Marvel Rivals does seem to have that problem in spades. But given how long Overwatch lasted and is still kinda lasting despite how much steam it's lost, reviewing Rivals— oh, I'm sorry, that's on me. Did you click on this video thinking it was gonna be a review of Uncharted 3? Well, now you know how I feel, because I downloaded the Nathan Drake collection and clicked on a game labeled Uncharted 3, hoping to play and review Uncharted 3, and those hopes were quickly dwindled. We're gonna start off with the story. Towards the start of the third entry in the saga of globe-trotting and adventuring through history that was supposed to only have 3 entries, then 4, and then 5, you see how the protagonist came to be who he is today. Specifically, their life in their early teens and passion for their future career. It is one of the first times they do what the plot of these entries are based on, and revolves around the origin of one iconic accessory to their outfit. Cut back to the present, and you find yourself racing to find a historical artifact tied to you and your mentor's past that's linked to Christianity, against a rich person who wants this artifact for the power it can bestow on them. Filled with brawls, gunfights, climbing— that may sound wrong, but yes, climbing, and centuries-old mansions, this race eventually leads you under the hot sun of the Middle East. It's there that you officially join forces with an order of people that's been dedicated to protecting this artifact and the power it contains since it existed, an order that is hostile to the protagonist at first, and in the desert, you fight your way through an enemy convoy to save that person that has been looking for this treasure with you since you were a kid. Once the convoy and the enemy forces are officially beaten after finding more than what you bargained for, and going through trials in the Middle East throughout the story to find it, the story ends with a choice. Our hero can either save themselves or a relic of history. A choice the hero is guided through by their mentor, the person who's been chasing this thing with them forever, and ultimately tells them to let it go. You had better listen closely, because I am only going to say this once. Word for word! Bar for bar! I would gladly be the first person to defend this game's story and say that no, it is not a blatant ripoff. It does have plenty of high quality and creative originality, but buddy, it is towing that line. And what's annoying is that the one time I'd like this game to be a ripoff, it isn't. I think one of my favorite moments in the entire Indiana Jones series is when he's trying to figure out where to look for the next clue when over time, the clue has been built over. Is it on the nose? Yep. Love it regardless. And that's probably the one ripoff that I would really love to see, and they don't do it. They do it in the Uncharted movie. However, I'd like to see it done outside of product placement for Papa John's. And with how Marlowe dresses in black leather and commands legions of disposable goons wearing 3-piece suits and sunglasses, it's clear to see they derived a fair bit from The Matrix 2. And that word only applies to The Matrix here. Derive. Because everything ever in reality is derived from something else. Frankly, I think outright copying and stealing from people you like is the best way to improve. Don't make money off of work that you stole, but I developed drawing skills by looking at art I liked and copying it by eyeballing it, which helped teach me the way to do things. I practiced by copying, and through that copying, used those skills I built to make my own art deriving from my favorites. So inspiration from The Matrix deriving from the Wachowskis is fine, but outright taking set pieces, elements, and story structure from a popular movie in the same genre as your game goes beyond inspiration and makes this game actively lose stock in my brain. Geniuses like myself can look at the title and deduce the fact that this is the third Uncharted game. And by game 3, you should be in your own lane doing your own thing. And I can't help but wonder if that heavy inspiration is what makes this story so enjoyable. So far, this is the most fun story in the series, but probably the worst quality and least impactful, to the point that the flaws have stuck with me much more than where it shines. The overall story is solid and easier to keep up with than the others, but when you look at the mission-specific events and the details of how they execute each plot point, it really falls apart. I'll start with the former, moments that are crucial to one or a couple of missions but don't have much impact on the story. For example, giant spiders that are afraid of light. Are we really doing this? I'm gonna let off the gas for saying this game steals stuff. I'm not gonna say they did that for this. This just happens to remind me of the stupid giant fire ants from Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, where they're here for a gimmick like jangling keys. What do they have to do with anything except for this goofy 1 in a million set piece in France that, by the way, also happens to be replicated in Yemen and Syria? Mind control fear darts made sense the few times we saw them in retrospect, which got us from one plot point to the other. But it's because I remembered the fear water after I finished the game, only to then realize they never had it in the first place. That's what they're looking for this whole time. There's no explanation to one of the funniest bits in this game where Talbot just teleports, and then he gets shot and just does not have a bullet wound. And I know that's not a hallucination because everybody sees it. Why does this dude have cheat codes up until the very end of the game? And like I was saying, some plot points are great. I think this is a very well-rounded treasure hunting story with a breadcrumb trail that's easy enough for the player to follow. Like how when you combine 2 pieces of a disc found in France and Syria, they point you to the location of the next clue, but it's the poor way they choose to incorporate each good point in the story that bugs me. The fact that the Queen of England sent her top sailor, Sir Francis Drake, and her top mathematician, John Dee, to collaborate on a secret mission that also later involves Lawrence of Arabia's less famous background as an archaeologist? Brilliant! The fact that this later turns into a secret society that Marlowe is part of, not exactly brilliant. Nathan tricking Marlowe and Talbot and the audience into thinking he sold them the ring and is now dead? That's great! But did they actually succeed in convincing the audience that either of those things actually happened in the first chapter of the game? Not a chance. Same with Sully's second fake-out death. Great idea to do it after you found what you're looking for so it feels more real and like there's no time to undo it, but the reveal he is alive is seen coming a mile away when Nathan immediately after starts hallucinating an eclipse and ghost riders. Adding a side villain, good. Shoehorning him in out of nowhere, not good. I like using the stars as a map, but the problem is that while I'm no astronomer, I have seen Moon Knight, so I know that stars drift over time, and that star map is now pretty much useless. Having an actual Atlantis of the Sands is so rad, but I don't know who lived here or who built it, and it's like a mix of El Dorado and Shangri-La, where there's actually something built, but there's no real treasure in the same way we think of it, and if you consume it in some way, you start tweaking. My biggest complaint about this problem, though, is how they wanted to make this one personal to Drake, and I really like that idea, but there's a few ways to go about it. You could put his relationship with Victor at stake, have Nate push him too far, ask too much of him, and they start to go down that road.
I gotta say, I'm losing the plot here. Remind me again why we're doing this?
No. If you're gearing up for one of your I'm too old for this speeches, spare me.
Nate, these guys are playing for keeps.
Yeah, so? What, you're just gonna roll over for them now?
Nobody's talking about rolling over.
Then quit acting like you're ready to lay down and die, all right?
Listen, kid. I've had you back for 20 years. I'm not going anywhere. Obviously. I just want to make sure we're doing this for the right reasons. You got your pride all tangled up in this thing. It's making you reckless. I taught you better than that.
But then they completely back out.
Just isn't worth it, Nate. Let this one go.
So it's a plan, kid?
Guess I'm going to Yemen. You up for it?
Of course I am.
They tease it happening.
What, Sully?
He would go to the ends of the earth for you, Nate. Just don't ask him to.
But when those consequences catch up, it's fake and Nathan doesn't really learn anything. And if you don't want any wedges driven between those two, or you don't want Sully to die, burn Nathan's bridges with Charlie and Chloe. They could have put his already rocky relationship with Elena on the line, but they don't. It's already on the line and they end up fine because they choose the same dynamic as the last 2 games. They meet and butt heads, but they work together and fall in love. They meet and lock horns again in the next game because they've already broken up and Nate has moved on, but by the end of it, they're back in love. Then they meet and once again are at odds in this game, but it's because they've already been married and separated off screen, and by the end of it, they're back in love again. They don't want to move away from that dynamic because it isn't broken, so they refuse to fix it, which means they only have one road to go down left: his identity. This is personal for Nathan because of how closely tied it is to the man he built his life after, Sir Francis Drake. So they make his ring a big part of the game, and that's fine. Put his identity at risk, but they do it in the wrong way. The ring is important because it has sentimental value. The phrase engraved on it has defined his life. But now it also just has monetary value because it's the key to finding a treasure when combined with another artifact. Not only is that unnecessary, it just doesn't make any sense because either the ring isn't special and any ring with those dimensions will fit in the astrolabe, or it's somehow physically different in a way that's barely noticeable to the naked eye, and that special alteration hasn't worn down over time. It also just makes Nathan dumb as a bag of hammers. Dude, the only reason the astrolabe and ring matter in this treasure hunt is because it points them to Sir Francis Drake's ship, the Golden Hind. Well, I could have told you that! Nathan, for the past 2 decades, you have been on this trail, and one thing has evaded you this whole time, and that's the astrolabe. You need the astrolabe to find the treasure Sir Francis Drake was hiding on this voyage across the sea. If I were in his shoes, lacking the clue I need, and with my incredibly little and rudimentary knowledge of history, the very first place I'd look to try and pick up the trail is the damn boat he used for that voyage. And he didn't think to do that for 20 years. For almost the entire span of time that I've been alive on this earth, that thought did not cross his mind. Not only is this destructive to the plot, it's destructive to the characters as well. Make the ring important because of what Nathan will do to keep it. If it's the ring or Sully or the ring or Elena, he'll lose the ring every time. But the way to do it is to put himself in danger, which they do, but he still chooses right. He should feel like he needs it and almost dies trying to save it, but what brings him back is Elena saying she needs him. And if they did that and made it happen after seeing him almost lose her and put their relationship at risk, it would have hit so much harder. But why would he need the ring, I pretend to hear you ask? And I'll gladly tell you. Just look at how well written this character is. He's become a theme at this point, so I'll bring him up again. Nathan Drake is one of those characters like Indiana Jones, Boba Fett, or mostly Han Solo, where you want to know more about them, but really the mystery is what makes them so cool. Nobody wants to see the Kessel Run. We thought we did, but then when they showed us, it was ass, and some people say they executed it poorly, but honestly, there was no way they could have done it without us asking. That's it. And that's why Catherine Marlowe is one of my favorite villains in gaming. She is, honestly, nothing. Not an interesting character, but she does the opposite of what every other Uncharted villain does. Instead of being another obstacle for him to get past and add to the legend, she threatens to destroy that legend, that persona of Nathan Drake. During that scene after Nathan's drug trip, she gives him a full rundown of his history, what happened to his mom, the orphanage he ended up in, and the fact that he's not even Nathan Drake. This is where we see the human Nathan Drake, not the persona. It's even shown in the way she's holding the ring. She tells him he's in over his head, not just because she's powerful enough to have all this information, but because she has all this information, she knows he's in over his head because she sees who he really is. And whether or not that facade stays intact is in the palm of her hand. She's not only a threat to him by knowing who he really is, but she's now a threat to the player themselves with the power to make them meet their hero. And I will say, I wish there was a better way to do it, because now it's a worthless piece of silver lost in the desert that might as well not exist, but I do really like Nathan losing the ring to signify the start of his new life committed to Elena. He needs the ring to keep that persona, and that persona cannot coexist with the person Elena fell in love with. And that's why Nathan should have almost died choosing the ring, but been convinced by Elena like I said earlier. He wouldn't have been choosing her. He would have been choosing the real him over who he wants to be for her sake. But we do end up seeing a solid amount of Nathan's origins, and I don't hate it because he's already adopted that persona of being a Drake. And after seeing how he was as a kid and the circumstances he grew up in, yes, some things about this guy are starting to make sense. We get to see how Nate met his mentor Sully, and to be honest, given the suspicion they threw on him in the first game and his minimal role in the second, I didn't expect them to have 2 decades worth of history up to this point and essentially be this kid's dad. I don't know, I don't hate that development, but it just didn't really read that way in the previous games. It's a bit sudden too. In the same day Nate picked his pockets and Sully stopped his execution, they decide to start his mentorship, and Sully says,
I see great things in our future, kid.
5 video games worth. Like I brought up earlier, Naughty Dog is reliant on starting their games with Nathan and Elena already at odds, and to keep that rift in 2, they introduced Chloe as a love interest, and I'm really glad that they brought her back as an actual character. She was in the last game too, but it's really nice to see her exist outside of being a roadblock in the main character's relationship. Especially because this is a relationship I really care about. These characters are super well written with an almost Han Solo Princess Leia dynamic of loving annoyance, and it's great to see the dangers and adventures they've gone through before are actively affecting and crucial to the way they behave now.
Hey, what are you doing?
Elena, listen.
Oh, damn it. I knew you would try something like this.
Don't. Please. Let's be honest. This is a 1,000,000 to 1 shot. When I almost lost you before,
You're not gonna.
I just can't do that again.
And these characters are only accentuated by the fantastic performances of the voice actors and motion capture artists. You know what else performs well? This game technically. Yeah, how's that for a transition? I don't really have much to talk about here. It's not really outstanding when it comes to obvious things like frame rate or graphical fidelity, besides the slight upgrade. Characters still have some freaky eyes sometimes, but the little features they add in and the way they use ingenuity to go about adding features they technically can't is really interesting. There's so many little details and set pieces, the bar at the start especially, that make it feel lived in and real and not a movie set. Things that wouldn't be there without a story behind them, like all the trophies. They're the same ones every time, there are only like 2 sets, but seeing the transition between in the formation of wrinkles in Nate's shirt as he moves is really cool. Sand fills in the footprints Nathan leaves behind in the desert, which may not seem like much at first, but is particularly impressive when you look back 2 years at those shitty snow effects in Uncharted 2. And at the start of that set piece, when the camera pans out to show just how royally boned Nathan is, it would probably be too much for the engine to render, so the environment almost looks painted like the old God of War games, which is a really smart way to circumvent a lack of console power. That same ingenuity can be found in the gameplay too. If I told you that I was excited about how they approach combat when climbing, you would think I was a complete doofus, because up to this point, it's just been stop climbing, pull out your gun, and use the side of what you're climbing as cover at its best. At its worst, it's been stop climbing out in the open, shoot, keep climbing. But here, while still limited in camera control and movement, they completely change your perspective on the fight by having you shoot people above you and use the underside of what you're grabbing as cover. It's not the most exciting thing ever, and they only really use it a couple of times, but it's a really interesting new addition I appreciate, as it gets hard to figure out what's next for combat in a series like this, but once you see this, it's clear that this was the next step forward. Speaking of the climbing, they openly ridicule you for not going outside and instinctively knowing what to do once you see those ledges, but in general, it's still as fun as ever with expert modeling, positioning, and camera work to make sure the player knows where to go instinctually. One area of the gameplay I would have really liked to have seen improved though was the hand-to-hand combat. It's the very first playable section of the game, and it goes on for an eternity. You'd think it was the tits if they were this confident in it, but it's hand-holdy and repetitive. Even games with slow hand-to-hand are fun because they take skill. You have to time your strikes. While Uncharted literally slows the game down to tell you, hey little buddy, you're gonna wanna press that triangle button, and in case that isn't clear enough, I'm gonna throw a button prompt on screen. Have fun, little guy. It's effortless, and without any resistance to put up a challenge, it just becomes something you have to do. In terms of gunplay, there really is nothing new they added. It's the same old, same old. The only thing I think is worth mentioning is that I really like how in Uncharted you are fighting pirates. In Uncharted 2, you are fighting the army of a raging war criminal hell-bent on world domination. And here, you're fighting British people. And the biggest part of Uncharted that everyone loves is the overwhelming spectacle created by their set pieces, and they are top-notch here. Running and gunning through the burning chateau might be my favorite set piece in the series up to this point. It's incredible. Again, things continue to only get worse despite the fact that they logically cannot get any worse. And that's one of the reasons why we love Nathan Drake. Not because he's gotten through all these dangerous scenarios, it's that it's always by the skin of his teeth. It's seeing another human in danger that automatically makes us root for him, and it's because there's no time to rest, we only want to see him make it more and more as the set piece goes on. It's that perseverance that makes him so characteristically attractive to the audience. And so far, they've always been able to toe that line of survivability, just barely crossing it and making him live through things he realistically wouldn't, but not crossing it so far that it's unbelievable. I don't even think the citizens of Alderaan, when they saw a big green laser in the sky, were more fucked than Nathan getting sucked out of a cargo plane in the middle of a 500-mile wide desert with no sense of direction other than the sun in the sky. It's like the Tibetan mountain village in the last game, where I know how on the timeline we got here, but it's still such a pivot that I'm asking, how did we get here? And it's not that simple. Let's think about this. After being subjected to enough G-force that would certainly make me pass out, let alone be too discombobulated to understand where I am, he then grabs onto a box that happens to have a chute so fast that his bones would probably be shattered. And if not, when he gets a grip, he'd probably have his fingers or arms ripped from his body. Maybe even when he pulls the chute too. And then he's stuck in and has to wander through a desert so lethal, trade routes go around it. And it goes for so long, he gets dehydrated, can't walk straight, and gets so confused he walks in circles. And then, after collapsing, he climbs through this ghost town and manages to solo an entire platoon with their own turret mounted on a truck. I can't even think of anything funny to say here because no words I can find can even capture how I'm feeling about this. Overwhelmingly dumbfounded might do the trick. It's been this way with set pieces the whole game too. There are some great ones I really have no complaints with, again the chateau, and climbing up the sideways flooding cruise ship, and earlier when your cover keeps shifting around in the rain, but most of them have a bad trade-off, even if they're not completely ridiculous like the cargo plane. The entire ship graveyard, and Actually, yeah, the cruise ship, they are great, but it's pretty unnecessary when you realize you gain nothing. Sully wasn't even there, and you could cut out this whole section and the story would still flow fine. Sometimes it's small, like how the tire tracks are inconsistent for the sake of the puzzle. Sometimes it's that they don't think ahead, like how they can't have guns in the streets of Yemen, but Marlowe's men barge through the front door armed to the teeth with SPAS 12s. Other times it's that the game tells you to be stealthy when you don't have to.
Man, I don't want to have to use this.
I know, but we have to do this quietly.
And then later when you do actually have to be stealthy, it's so easy that this is where I can confidently say I've gotten the most shameful stealth kill in my whole life. Holding off the spiders is a cool idea, but has repetitive and slow gameplay where you're waiting on the NPCs. This game has some of the coolest concepts you'll ever see, played out in a way that makes you ask, at what cost? And that's Uncharted 3's biggest problem for me, because it affects more than set pieces. It's the whole game. They do all this stuff at what cost? They lose the ring forever in a scene that would be beautiful if it was built up properly, but they choose to stick to what they're used to. They give their villains complex backstories and superpowers at the cost of logic because we're given no explanation. I gotta give Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception an 8.5 out of 10, and it's because of those flawed trade-offs that I had to work backwards for that score. If they had just looked before they leaped and calculated these ideas in a way that made sense, this easily would be a 9.5, 10 out of 10. But because those glaring flaws are there, I had to work backwards and say, well, I know it's not more than a 9, and I gave the last two games an 8 and an 8.5, so where did the flaws make it fit with those two? But hey, now that the ring is gone and Nick can put his life of treasure hunting behind him for Elena, we can cross this game off the list with a great place to end the series. Oh, it just never ends!